Good rainy Friday, everybody.
It's a Friday.
And it's kind of warm.
And we're here. Oh, I know. I almost put like a heavy sweater because it doesn't look like it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I prefer rainy days that are warm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I do. I was going to say, or sunny days that are cold. No, I know exactly. Warm.
Yeah,
Warm
but
weather.
not the rainy days that are like humid where
our hair turns into Monica's.
Yucky. Yeah, and Monica hair. Not our Monica.
Of course.
Geller.
Well, I'm glad nobody's tuned in just yet because that was 45 seconds of nonsense. We're feeling giddy this Friday, apparently.
Yes.
And we are talking about multi-generational living. Because
can you say that again?
Yeah. Rewind. Multi-generational living.
There you go.
It actually comes off the tongue very easily, but I just... So a lot of people, it's had a stigma. I think there was a generation that I think it had a stigma because I feel like, maybe 100 years ago, 70 years ago, even 50 years ago, to be very close to family and to have, generations living in the same, house or down the block. I'm talking to my parents and, cousins lived down this block, 3 down, another set of cousins down that block, and grandma was somewhere in between. Or maybe that's just my family. I don't know. That's how I feel like everybody.
I think there were a lot of families like that and a lot of stories like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then it kind of became everybody's moving off and doing their own thing. But it kind of seems like right now we're back into a trend of being closer to other generations. So last week, we had a pretty cool infographic that we had out on our Facebook about some new multi-generational stats. And the number of people living in multi-generational households has quadrupled in the last 10 years. So it's definitely becoming a thing again.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think.
Absolutely.
It makes a lot of sense, just logical, economic sense.
Well, there's many different ways too. So, I mean, we're not, I'm talking about the general vicinity. And that's kind of a popular thing I'm seeing, where sisters are kind of in the same neighborhood or maybe a neighborhood off from each other. Grandparents being 5-10 minutes away sometimes in a certain area that they've all kind of moved to be around each other. And it's not necessarily where they originally started. When the kids were teenagers, the parents have moved to be closer to a child.
Yeah, my parents moved near us a couple of years after we moved to Naperville. So, they came out to visit quite a bit. They like our pool. They like the neighborhood. And so it made sense. My brother's kids were getting older and my kids were smaller. So it made sense at the time. They kind of moved here to help me. And sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes, they move closer so their kids can help them. And sometimes the multi-generation goes down another level from that. And you have adult children moving back with their parents, sometimes after college, sometimes after a divorce, sometimes just, again, for economy's sake, to save up or, pool resources.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody has their moments, right? So if you have young children, and you're trying to, work full time or go back to school for additional training or something like that, having kind of a sibling or a parent nearby or actually in the home or on the property is, easier, but also, other way around when you're trying to care for someone, being in the same house, down the street, on the same property is much, much easier than, trying to find in, maybe a couple hours to drive 20, 30, 40 minutes or not being able to at all, get out there because it's another state or whatever.
Yeah. And sometimes it's lateral. So sometimes it's the same generation. You'll have siblings who
Correct.
either, sometimes one buys a home and the other one rents. Sometimes they buy it together. Sometimes they'll have a two flat and one lives on one floor and one lives on the other. I knew two elderly sisters who lived in apartments in the same building on the same floor. They would have coffee together every morning. They'd check in on each other and then go do their own thing for the next several hours. And then they'd get together sometimes for lunch, sometimes for dinner. There was always someone who was, in a short distance to help or socialize with or whatever. Sometimes they just watch TV together. If they wanted to be alone, they had their separate places to get away from each other too, which is kind of an important thing because when you're family, as much as you love one another, sometimes you need to get away from each other, right?
Right. So we kind of wanted to talk about if this is something that is, some of the benefits, but then also what are some of the options? Because, you might only think of one, sometimes it is just one larger multi-generational house. So something like my house where I have, I bought it personally, I bought it with the chance that at any point my family or my husband's family might need, there might be somebody who's in need, and we have a full finished basement with kind of a little bit of everything. There's a bathroom, there's a laundry room, and a small kitchen. And that is, that was something that caught our attention, and we loved that idea because the people who had owned this before had the same thing. Their kids were getting older, and one of the kids kind of wanted that space in the basement to be their own and have their own kind of life without needing to, because right now rents are insane.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started out,
you can charge a lot to that kid in the basement.
Well, I'm talking, yes, but I'm saying, when I think my rent was $800 a month for my first apartment, and it was a 2-bedroom, 2 full bath. Like, it was huge. I didn't need it, but it was $800. You can't get that for under $1,200, $1,400, $1,500 these days. And so it's a different time out there, so that's one way. So that's, so when you're thinking about things like how should you finish a basement, making sure that there's another bedroom down there and that has a second exit. So an egress window is usually what you see, which is a window that's easily accessible to get out. It will be harder if you don't have one of those to have a legal bedroom in the basement.
Yeah, or just a safe bedroom, because we don't, obviously you don't want to put somebody down there and then there's a fire and something terrible happens.
Correct. But that is something to consider, when
in a bathroom. I just had somebody who isn't moving, but they're finishing their basement, and she messaged me and said, my husband wants to put a bathroom in the basement. I'd rather spend the money someplace else. Tell me, is this a good idea? And I said,
yes,
it's a great idea. I hate to tell you, this time I'm with your husband. And I said, and in 10 years, your teenagers will have gotten enough use out of that extra bathroom that you'll be very happy that you put it in.
Absolutely. So that's something to consider. So, it might not be something that's, useful to you right now, but it could be, it could have major selling points.
And it's also one of those things you have to be careful. It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to compare dollar for dollar and say, well, if we do this, we're going to get another $15,000 for our house. It could, but it's going to be the difference between how much somebody wants your house and another one. So it's definitely a scale tipper.
I've never come across anybody who's like, oh, this finished basement has a bathroom and a bedroom. Come on.
Right.
They're usually very thrilled to see.
Yeah. I guess one thing to question is, I would, as we're talking about it being a value add, I wouldn't do that if you're going to sell that, this year. I wouldn't add it to sell. That's where you're probably not going to see an immediate return, but it's so useful for both your own use and anybody would appreciate it. So always, I think, a good idea. And especially if you're finishing the basement anyway.
Yes. And then, so outside of a larger, communal home, one of the other things is, that you can consider is,
Sorry, I want to make one more point before we move
sure.
on. Again, talking about value, oftentimes we have people who think that because they have a kitchen in their basement, it's going to add 10, 15, $20,000 in value because it's another kitchen. This is not, the demand is not at the point where that would actually be a value add to the majority of buyers. So it might be interesting to some buyers who are looking for something like what we're talking about today. But again, if you're going to put that in for your own use, go ahead and do that. That's a great idea. But don't expect that you're going to add $20,000 in value to your house because you have a kitchen in the basement.
I would say, though, having a fridge and another sink is,
again,
definitely
everybody would like that, but how much are they going to add to the on top of your neighbor's identical house without that? Nothing, or little.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. So we got that. So then there's also just buying, there's a demand for larger tracts of land. And we definitely have it, kind of out my way where there's, room to put additional outbuildings, a second home or again, kind of a livable, not quite granny pod if you're not aware what that is, but there's, granny pods are popular, probably not here because I don't think that I think they're kind of glorified sheds. So maybe in an area where you don't have to have a lot of insulation.
Yeah.
But that is something too, getting, maybe not in Illinois, but that's something to consider getting, a property that could allow kind of that temporary granny pod type of thing, which is pretty affordable without needing to have, a whole extension put on a house. But the larger tracts of land, where you can
some areas there's coach houses or
correct
second stories over garages.
Or converted, second garages that were converted to a living space and have that. So
it's just a first floor bedroom with a full bath.
Absolutely. So, and again, those are kind of things that you can think outside the box too, as far as, like I'm sitting in my office right now, it's my first floor. I could easily put some doors on here and make it a bedroom.
Yeah.
There's enough space by my half bath that if we took out a closet, we could make it a full bath, and now, there's a generation, if it's hard for stairs and things like that, they can get up and down on. But yeah, so the larger tracts, so there's a lot of things that go into, thinking outside of the box and seeing how either your current situation could be enhanced if you needed multi-generational living. But then there's also, things to consider if you are doing it, thinking about doing it and your current home doesn't work. Where do you want to, because being able to, kind of combine the home buying budget is really kind of key, especially in this area. That it's not necessarily double to get double the amount of land. So that's kind of cool. Like at least where I'm at, maybe the average home might be in the 3s or so, but finding a house on 1.5 acres might only be 5.5. So where that $300,000 house is on 1/4 acre. So there is some, affordability factor too, that you can kind of combine either on a regular traditional house that has the space or kind of stepping up to a larger tract of land, a larger, couple buildings that are livable. So there are some things. And then Ruth, I was talking to Ruth about how we're kind of already helping our sellers promote this, because whenever we have a sale, we send a new listing, we send out flyers a couple days before a house goes on the market saying, hey, do you have a friend or a family member who's looking to buy in this neighborhood? So we're really already kind of trying to help it because we know that there are buyers out there.
Yeah. And we find, so a lot of times we hear from other realtors, they have the term nosy neighbors. They don't really want the neighbors at the open house or calling and getting the information. to us, that's a great source of buyers. We've had tons of success with neighbors finding buyers for the homes for sale. So
Absolutely. So what are your thoughts on multi-generational houses? Is that something, because I really think that it might be a thing that's going to be happening. I mean, people are living longer, they're having health problems,
and housing is getting more expensive, and assisted living is not cheap.
No.
So people who thought they were gonna, throw grandma in a home, that's gonna cost you. So you might want to be nice to her now and be much more comfortable. But yeah, I think economics is a big part of it, but I also think, it makes sense. Why do we cast our kids out before they're, fully ready to stand on their 2 feet? Why do we push our parents into something that is away from family? So obviously everything isn't going to work for everyone, but there's different ways to do this. And then people are being very creative. You can share some space and not all. You can make it one big happy family. And it can really be a great solution to a lot of current issues.
Right. And again, I mean, just without whatever's happening now, I mean, 1 in 10 homes being multi-generational that is a pool. That is a decent pool of potential buyers or sellers, that, you definitely want to take into consideration as far as, not being an oddity, or will the changes I do, connect with somebody else? Yes, they will.
Yeah.
All
right. So let us know if you're looking for a multi-generational living situation, and we'll help you get there.
Or getting out of one.
Maybe
you're like, oh, we tried that.
Behind my kids' house. We can do that.
Absolutely. All right. Until next Friday. Have a great one.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
And if you're an agent, pop over to our YouTube channel and watch our next, where we get into the agent side of multi-generational living.
Absolutely.